Most of my psychedelic experiences have been positive, filled with profound insights and blissful moments. But I have had my fair share of challenging experiences, and I'm going to tell you about one of the worst. It all started on a sunny afternoon when I decided to take a new kind of journey. Instead of my usual 1 tab of acid, I opted for 2, each with a hefty dose of 300 micrograms. I thought it would be an opportunity to dive even deeper into the realms of my own mind, to explore the inner sanctums of my consciousness. Usually, with 1 tab, I managed to reach some profound and deeply spiritual places. So I thought that doubling the dose would deepen and lengthen the bliss I normally experienced. I was very wrong. The first hour or so was fairly typical. I felt a growing sense of excitement and anticipation. The world around me began to shift and warp, like reality itself was undergoing a surreal transformation. Colors grew more vivid and patterns emerged from the walls. It was all pretty standard, and I was reveling in the beauty of the experience. But then something unusual happened. The onset of the trip came on quicker than I'd ever experienced. It was as if I had stepped onto a psychedelic roller coaster, and there was no turning back. I could feel the intensity building, and it was both thrilling and terrifying. The peak hit me like a freight train. Reality shattered into a million pieces, and I was hurtled into an alternate dimension. The room around me morphed and contorted, as if it were a living, breathing entity. I felt like I was standing on the edge of the abyss, staring into the infinite unknown. As the world dissolved around me, I was confronted with my deepest fears and anxieties. It was as if my mind had turned against me, dredging up all of the darkness and doubt I'd ever buried deep within. The shadows that lurked in the corners of my psyche now loomed large and menacing. The beauty of the experience was gone, replaced by an overwhelming sense of dread. I felt like I was falling into an abyss, unable to grasp onto anything stable or familiar. It was a descent into madness, a terrifying free fall through the darkest recesses of my own mind. My thoughts spiraled out of control, and I was bombarded with a never-ending stream of negative and irrational beliefs. I was convinced that I had crossed some invisible threshold and would never return to reality. It was as if I had lost my grip on the world and was tumbling into the void. Time lost all meaning, and I was trapped in a never-ending present. So it was a nightmarish loop of fear and confusion, and I couldn't see a way out. I was convinced that I had broken my mind, that I'd gone too far and there was no going back. In the midst of this darkness, I began to question everything. I questioned the nature of reality, the purpose of existence, and the meaning of life. It was as if I had been thrust into the heart of the ultimate cosmic mystery, and I was desperately searching for answers. But the answers I found were not comforting or reassuring. Instead, they were more like riddles without solutions. I felt like I was unraveling the very fabric of reality, only to find more questions and uncertainty. It was a maddening and disorienting experience, and I felt like I was losing my grip on sanity. In the midst of this boundless expanse, terrifying dark figures began to materialize. I couldn't help but feel that they were the physical manifestations of the darkest corners of my own mind, taking on sentient forms. These eerie figures stood over me. They felt oppressive, like they were sucking the air from my lungs. They seemed to know my deepest fears, and they reveled in my torment. I was trapped in a nightmarish landscape of my own creation, haunted by the very demons of my psyche. I struggled to make sense of this bizarre and horrifying place, desperately seeking an escape from the clutches of these malevolent entities. It was as if I had entered a realm of pure nightmare, where the boundaries between the inner and outer worlds had dissolved completely. It was a descent into the abyss, a journey through the darkest recesses of my own soul, and I had no choice but to confront the darkness within. As the hours stretched on, I began to grapple with the idea that I might be stuck in this altered state forever. But eventually, the intensity of the trip began to wane, and I slowly started to come down from the peak. Reality began to reassemble itself piece by piece, and I was once again able to distinguish between the inner workings of my own mind and the external world. But the experience left a profound mark on me. Every time I've used psychedelics since that day, this experience is always at the back of my mind. I had glimpsed the darkest corners of my own psyche, confronted my deepest fears, and questioned the very nature of reality. It was a journey into complete darkness, a descent into madness that left me with more questions than answers.